Mark Carney just stood in front of the world's most powerful people and told them the American-led order is dead. He received a standing ovation. Done. 17 minutes, 2,000 words, one declaration that shook Davos to its foundations. The Prime Minister of Canada walked onto the stage at the World Economic Forum and said what nobody else had the courage to say. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. The old order is not coming back. Nostalgia is not a strategy. Everyone believed Canada would stay quiet. Keep the peace. Protect the trade relationship. They were utterly wrong. Here's what just happened. Carney delivered a speech he wrote himself. No committee. No focus groups. Just the former governor of the Bank of Canada and Bank of England, laying out in plain language that the rules-based international order enabled by American hegemony no longer works. That middle powers like Canada have been living within a lie. And that the time has come to stop pretending. Here's what the media isn't connecting. This wasn't a policy announcement. This was a manifesto for a new era. Bob Rae, Canada's former UN ambassador, said he had never seen a global reaction to a speech like this. The Carnegie Endowment called it uncharacteristically candid for Davos and a Canadian. Finnish President Alexander Stubb called it one of the best speeches at Davos this week. If you want to stay ahead of this story, subscribe and hit the bell. We cover this daily. Did Carney just redefine Canada's place in the world, or did he just start a war with Washington? Now let me show you what actually happened, because the details are extraordinary. Let me break this down because the details matter. Carney began with a story. A Czech dissident named Václav Havel wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless in 1978. In it, Havel described a greengrocer who puts a sign in his window, "Workers of the world unite." Not because he believes it, because compliance is easier than resistance. Carney told the audience at a Davos that middle powers have been doing the same thing for decades. Then came the diagnosis. Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons, tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities. The strong do what they can, the weak suffer what they must. Now watch what Carney did next. He didn't plead for the old order to return. He didn't ask America to be kinder. He said middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. He called for a new alliance of nations that still believe in sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the rule of law. This is Mark Carney, the man who steered the Bank of Canada through the 2008 financial crisis and then ran the Bank of England through Brexit. He understands global finance better than almost anyone alive. And he just told the world's financial elite that the system they built is broken. While Trump was preparing his own Davos speech, Carney was declaring independence. And this is where it gets really interesting. Here's where it gets fascinating. Do you see what's happening here? Connect the dots. Carney delivers his speech on January 20th. Standing ovation. Global praise. The next morning, he leaves Davos without meeting Trump. Hours later, Trump takes the same stage and fires back directly. Canada gets a lot of freebies from us. They should be grateful, but they're not. I watched your Prime Minister yesterday. He wasn't so grateful. Canada lives because of the United States. Remember that, Mark, the next time you make your statements. Step 1. Carney declares the American-led order is over. Step 2. Trump proves him right by threatening Canada from the Davos podium. Step 3. The world watches as the President of the United States publicly bullies an allied nation. Step 4. Carney returns to Quebec City and delivers his response. Step 5. Trump rescinds Canada's invitation to his Board of Peace. Now connect that to what I showed you earlier. Every threat Trump made validated Carney's thesis. The Carnegie Endowment noted that Carney signaled at least one ally is prepared not only to hedge against an unpredictable United States, but if need be to balance against it. Critics argue Carney's speech lacked specific policy details. The data says something different. Since Davos, Canada has signed new trade agreements with China and Qatar, announced $32 billion for Arctic defense, built a coalition with Nordic nations. The speech was the declaration. The actions followed. Is this the beginning of a new world order without American leadership, or will Washington reassert control? Drop your answer in the comments. But here's the part that should make every Canadian pay attention. Let me show you what this costs Washington. Start with the credibility numbers. Carney's speech has been compared to Louis Saint Laurent's 1947 Gray Lecture, which defined Canada's post-war international role. Commentators called it possibly the best speech at Davos this year, perhaps the best speech ever at Davos. French entrepreneur Arnaud Bertrand said it may prove to be one of the most important speeches made by any global leader over the past 30 years. Now, the political math. One Conservative MP crossed the floor to join the Liberals, citing Carney's speech as a contributing factor. Denmark's Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen thanked Carney from the bottom of her heart. NATO's Secretary General Mark Rutte said the speech is evidence that Canada is back as a pivotal global leader. Think about that for a moment. Meanwhile, Trump's response accomplished the opposite of its intent. By publicly attacking Canada, he validated every claim Carney made about great power coercion. U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick complained about the speech, saying, "Give me a break. All I got to do is listen to this guy whine and complain." That's the language of a bully, not a partner. The contrast is permanent. While Trump threatened, Carney built. While Washington demanded gratitude, Ottawa declared independence. While the president posted AI-generated maps showing American flags over Canadian territory, the Prime Minister stood in a fortress built to defend against American invasion and said, "We are masters in our home. This is our own country. The choice is up to us." Let that sink in. So where does this end? The answer is permanent. The end game is clear. Carney drew a line. Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. We are masters in our home. This is our own country. The choice is up to us. Washington's problem doesn't get fixed. It gets worse. Every time Trump demands gratitude, he proves the old partnership is dead. Every time he threatens annexation, he pushes allies toward alternatives. Every insult validates Carney's thesis that middle powers must build a new order without American permission. And that's exactly what's happening. China trade deal, Qatar energy partnership, Nordic Defense Alliance, Arctic security commitments. None of these required American approval. All of them create options that didn't exist before. The speech has already entered history. It will now define the response of the world to the erratic excesses of the hegemons, wrote Bob Ray. The conclusions of a speech like this matter less than the fact that it was given at all. A Canadian leader stood before the global elite and said, "The emperor has no clothes. The system is broken. We are building something new." While Washington demanded submission, Ottawa declared sovereignty. While Trump called Canada ungrateful, Carney called Canada a beacon. While the president confused Iceland with Greenland in his own speech, the Prime Minister delivered a masterpiece of clarity that the world will study for decades. Everything I've shown you tonight comes from public reporting, but the conclusions are mine. You decide what it means. If this analysis opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to see it. Subscribe if you haven't. And our last video covered how 6 G7 nations rejected Trump's Russia sanctions waiver. Link is on screen. Watch it now. This is Voice of Canada.